All right, good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Hertz Tribeca Trade Group with your end of day recap for Monday. And I have a chart of the S&P in front of us. And there were some telling things that we saw pre-market that kind of just really made me not want to add any risk, which I already kind of had that view going into the day. I really thought the indices were overbought. They still are a bit. You could see the relative strength index, the RSI, anytime it's over 70 is overbought. It got up to an 80, which is especially unique. So we did burn some of that off down to about a 75. But really, what was revealing was when I put this out on the morning. I do a Monday morning video that I send out to the public. I make it available just to kind of go over some levels with the value areas. And what I talked about was kind of, first of all, I thought it was weird that we were rallying pre-market with nothing else, meaning Europe and Asia not really well bid, in the overnight and pre-market session. To see us up 20 basis points and Europe kind of flattish to almost down didn't really make a lot of sense to me. But we found the technical level that said, hey, we're kind of butting up against resistance 2550 and a half, and noticed that we kind of tagged that and couldn't even really, didn't even make an attempt really to get above it. So that's the level to watch for the whole week. Again, this is on the 1 hour bar, which really gives some really good value areas for the whole week, right? These levels, they stay the same for the whole week, and are a pretty good judge if you're in a choppy market, or if you're in changing of direction, whether it's to the upside or downside, right? If we break outside of value, we're going to continue with the trend. If we're going to break below value, we've got trouble on our hands. But for now, we're kind of just right in the middle of the value area. And the same thing for IWM. That was the other tell this morning, was that, and actually we had one bar that actually got above it, but no close above. And then, again, it's a very thin value area because of the range of last week, which was here. So we actually did violate price to the downside, but hammer bar, and we managed to close inside value. So really, I think it could go either way for tomorrow. We'll just kind of have to see. I think it's possible that we could have a little bit more to the downside, or just a cooling off area, because again, we're still overbought. I mean, according to the RSI, wow, you could see a lot of volume today. Is that right? I'll have to check that. Maybe there's a EFP or something that went up after the close, but that looks like a lot of volume. Let me see if I can find where that's originating from. Could be the closing block. So I'll investigate that further. But yeah, look, it looks like a lot of volume. So nevertheless, we are still overbought. We're still at a 74. Again, I view anything greater than a 70 on the relative strength index overbought. Not a place to me where you really want to add a lot of risk. And so we'll see if that continues. If the support is 146.86, which I think that we, in all fairness, I think that we could get down to, and that would be probably a good buying or a good area to watch to see if we bounce from there. But that's still a couple dollars ahead. So we were only down 60 cents in here, which is 40 basis points. So really not a lot of volatility to kind of jump up and down a bit. My view, which I said in the trading room earlier, is I'd rather just have like one day of a down day rather than like the death by 1,000 cuts, where we just kind of like slowly kind of chop and go down. But hey, that's we don't we don't always get what we want. So it could be a couple more days of chop this week ahead of time. So there was a couple themes that I wanted to mention today. With the VIX, by the way, closed at 1033, which at least gives me a little bit of a better feeling. I really don't like to be adding risk when the VIX is below 10. I think that's crazy. But there was some very good option signals last week. Today was, I would say, it was okay. I mean, there's a lot of weekly stuff, a lot of short-term stuff, which I'm not really looking for that. And unless I feel like we've got good momentum in the day, then I'll day trade a little bit more. But, there was BABA calls that went up a couple times, short-dated stuff. There was some AMD and NVIDIA in the beginning of the day, which the semis did outperform. I think the semis finished up about 70 basis points. Micron was strong again. So a couple of different names in that group. And What else was strong? The gold miners were strong today. I did add to my GDX position. I talked about that in over the weekend about the GDX chart that was looking pretty good. So right in the beginning of the day, I added to GDX. I talked about we had a nice, really nice candle on Friday at the 200-day moving average. So a little bit of continuation today. Not a huge move, but we're back above the 50. So a little bit of progress. Almost an MACD crossover, not yet, but close. Maybe one more green bar, and we'll get a nice buy signal on that MAC, the MAC indicator. A couple other notable trades. I don't know why I don't have this one in here. I was just looking on the list. Sometimes I leave something out. Who knows what's going on with this name? This is another semi name. This was right around midday today. I thought I had this on the list, but I guess I don't. This is ON Semiconductor, another semiconductor that's way overbought. I did not buy this. Who knows what they're thinking? Maybe there's a rumor of the name getting taken out, but 11,000 contracts of ON Semi. Again, tough to buy this. All the way up here on a it's breaking out and it's overbought. So I've mentioned this a couple times. Sometimes you can get into names that we see a lot of buying, but you can get in cheaper. Like for instance, XBI, we saw this big block on Wednesday that went up, and I think this is so here's a great example. What did they pay for these XBIs on Wednesday? They paid 206. I think they're marking it like $1.70 or something like that. I don't know for sure. I looked it up earlier. It was $1.80. So keep in mind some of these real aggressive trades. You don't need to necessarily get into right away. I mean, this is now marking about 20% less than what they paid on Wednesday. And the same thing with ILG, which increased open interest. Unless something happened at the end of the day, looks like it did finish up on the day. It was down a little bit, but my point is that let's see if I can bring this up. This was also marking much cheaper than when they bought. Keep in mind, I think they bought those on the high of the day on Friday. So I think you can get into this trade a lot cheaper. So that may be the same thing with that ON name, the ON Semiconductor, because it is certainly overbought. A couple other trades that came up here. BlackBerry, again, pretty short dated stuff. I just bought stock. I'm actually holding it in BlackBerry. Those were the October 10 calls. I think the chart looks fine for now. It did kind of stall out. It does need to get over 1150 for further upside, but they went after those a couple times this morning. Deutsche Bank 2000. Now this was a nice longer dated trade. 2019 calls. ETE. There were some call spreads I think going up in January and April. This one's not ready yet. For how I make decisions. I did this last time. I actually went long in cash on ETE, and it hung above the 200-day moving average. It broke below, and I got out. So it hasn't been able to reclaim it yet. So another name to maybe keep. It's right below the 200-day moving average. For me, I would wait until a little bit of confirmation. What are you going to lose? 50 cents possible on this trade, 25 cents by waiting for some confirmation to see if this thing gets above the 200-day moving average. So that's what I'm looking at for ET. Nice dividend name. A couple other names, DXC. This is a name that I've never traded before, but that's the whole part of sometimes watching the tape is finding activity. And look at the volume in this thing today on a breakout. So this is another technology name. I think they're involved in like a lot of consulting services, cloud, and so forth. So nice MACD crossover. Look at the volume on today's breakout. We'll see if it has some behind it. It's not the best looking candle. Didn't close on the highs, but this is a 52-week high. And unlike ON, which has been just on a tear, this thing just broke out, right? So I think the breakout basically just happened a candle ago, and what's the symbol? DVC, is it? Nope, DFC. Like I said, I never traded it before. Where is it? DXE. Sorry about that. It's been a long day. DXC. So yeah, I mean, we're looking at like a nice base and 2 days of breakout. So nice, nice move. We'll see if it has some continuation tomorrow. GM, they keep going after GM calls, more long dated calls as well. A little bit of Lowe's, a little bit of Cake, a little bit of Disney calls today. This is the one trade. There's a lot of this aggressive NPTN. This is a textbook example of, now granted, I could be wrong on this. Let me show you a chart of this, but it's just not something I want to play with. NPTN, it's in a huge downtrend. Now, sure, maybe it could get back to the 50-day moving average, but you got to be quick with these counter trend trades. This name is in a big major downtrend. So maybe it comes out of that. Maybe somebody's thinking that the valuation it's gotten too cheap, but not something that I really want to traffic in. I think there's better trades than NPTN that has gone, once it went below the 200-day moving average, retest, fail, and it's gone from 12 bucks to 5. So again, maybe somebody thinking that it's way too cheap, but I don't know. I think there's better trades to try to stick your neck out in this thing. ARNC, for example, I think is a pretty good looking trade. I did take this trade. I kind of sat on my hands for the most part of the day. ARNC. This is the spinoff from Alcoa, I believe. It's got earnings in a couple weeks, but they bought these calls for about 40 cents, maybe a little bit under that. So this is a nice name, sitting above all the major moving averages, but not extended in my opinion. Again, look at the vol. I don't understand why there's so much volume in so many of these small cap names today. I don't know if it's a Thinkorswim issue, but I'll have to check on Bloomberg. But it seems like every name that I look at has this big volume today. This Yeah, there's got to be something wrong with Thinkorswim because look at the volume for SPY. So anyway, but literally everything I look at is showing that. Uh, Let me just check. Sorry, this is driving me nuts to see volume. Let's see what the SPY volume was for today. Yeah, I mean 34 million shares. What is Thinkorswim saying? Sorry to interrupt the video. It's 483. Yeah, so it looks like that's a little bit of an error there. Sorry to call them out. The last thing I will say on the put side, some really interesting stuff. Look at all the put orders. See if you could find this theme. I know you can't respond back to me in a video, but I'll shout them out for you. GIS, K, uh, KHC, PG, XLP. I mean, these are all packaged good names. We actually took this in the trading room today. We took some puts on XLP because they were really cheap. They were like 13 cents that expire today in the XLP ETF. Excuse me, that expire this week. Those were again, it expires this Friday, but for 13 cents, they were the 53 and a half puts. They're already marking at 21 cents. So we already made some nice money on this trade today. But I don't really have a theory behind that, why they're buying so many puts, other than, I mean, the charts all look atrocious in all these packaged good names. But I mean, they even bought puts at the end of the day in Procter and Gamble, which is the biggest weight in XLP. So it's be interesting to kind of keep this on your radar. All these puts that are going up on this group, which is really weak. By the way, if you look at the whole XLP ETF with the 200-day moving average, I believe it's now below. So it does set up for a nice short here. It closed below the 200-day moving average. So I would say that's a really interesting theme that's playing out here. Now, I don't think it has anything to do with the Fed minutes are later this week, but consumer staples are sensitive to interest rates, but not as sensitive to utilities and not as sensitive to interest rates as REITs are as well. So if somebody was really thinking that interest rates were going to go higher, I would think they would be buying a lot of puts in also the utilities and the REITs, which we're not really seeing. It's just consumer staples and in particular packaged good names. So I'll leave it there for the day, and we'll reconvene tomorrow morning. Have a great night, everybody, and I'll see you back in the trading room tomorrow morning. Thanks.